Hello neighbor, I'm Robert Burns, and it is such a delight to be back with you. And I've had to delay coming back to you for a little while. You may notice my voice is somewhat not what it would normally be. And for those of you who suffer from allergies, as I extensively do, for the last week I really would have been in no condition to have come to you and given you a sound off feature because my voice would have been horrendous. Not that it's anything all that great today, but at least I am recovering from that. From those of you who saw me at the last State Police Commission meeting, you're very familiar with just how bad it was, as on that day I was not in good shape for sure. But I appreciate you tolerating with me, and together we all got it done. So I'm gonna, I guess, as they would say in broadcasting, take a break from our regularly scheduled programming. Our last two episodes have involved contractor Billy Broussard, and we're certainly going to continue that series. I think you'll be very intrigued by the third episode of that particular feature. I'm having to divide that one up because it would be rather lengthy if I did not. But trust me, I think you'll very well look with anticipation toward that third segment of that series. But today we're going to shift back to our illustrious Inspector General, none other than Stephen Street. Many of you would know that I probably will never be on Stephen Street's Christmas list. You have seen me confront him in press club meetings about two prominent criminal case debacles that blew up in his face, namely Murphy Painter and Corey Delahousse. Now, I previously brought you up to speed on the Corey Delahousse case. That was a situation where Corey had uncovered $58 million in FEMA-related fraud in Livingston Parish. As a result, contractors did not get paid. Bobby Jindal clearly was not happy with this, and so he literally sicked Stephen Street onto Mr. Delahousse over an alleged $6,000 of time that they say he wasn't working. When as I say, he was an independent contractor. They cannot govern when, where, or how he does his work. That didn't matter to Stephen Street because the governor told him, you go after this guy, and that's what he did. That's why you see such sensitivity on the part of Mr. Street when I question him about his independence of the governor's office. In fact, at the last press club meeting, he made it a point of how they never should have gotten rid of the New Jersey Inspector General, and right after they did, you had the infamous bridge scandal involving Governor Christie, which provided, I didn't know he was going to pose that as an example, but it provided me with an excellent opportunity to say, well, gee, if they had hung on to her, it would have put you directly in the crosshairs, or would have placed her directly in the crosshairs of the governor. And I then asked him if there was any situation he could relay wherein he had ever been in the crosshairs of any governor. You'll see how sensitive he was to that question, because we're going to break away and give you his response. My question was for Inspector General Street. With regard to the Christie incident and your prior colleague, obviously if the agency had hung around, she would have been directly in the crosshairs of the governor. Can you cite us a single specific example that we can go and verify where you found yourself in the crosshairs of the governor, of a sitting governor?
And that's Robert Burns, ladies and gentlemen, Exhibit A, of what I'm talking about with regard to folks being upset with the IG because of our investigative activities. But if you can't find two better examples of my budget being zeroed out by the Louisiana legislature, I can't do anything. So I really have nothing else to say about that.
Now, folks, you got to admit, he didn't answer the question because the answer is no, okay? Stephen Street is not about to get himself in the crosshairs of a governor, all right? Now, at the end of the press club, I again pressed him about his independence, and he flatly said he can't be fired. Well, in fact, let's watch him.
Out of the 36 AGs across the state, can you tell me how many have an organization chart that report to the governor? And that should be irrelevant.
Most of them do report to the governor.
Most of them do.
Most of them do, but most of them also have the ability. Some of them are removable at will. Others cannot be fired by the governor, like me.
But, you know, he said some are protected, such as mine, is the way he kind of flippantly looked at me when he said that. That isn't true. And I'm going to give you the link for the statute that shows that's not true, okay? If the governor decides he wants to get rid of Stephen Street, all he's got to do is get a majority of the legislature to go along with it. You'll see that clearly in the statute. All right? That's all he's got to do. That is not a very difficult chore for any governor to do. Pick up the phone and you say, you do, you know, that little project we talked about, you do want me to support that. Oh, yes, Governor. Oh, you need Stephen Street gone. You got it, Governor. He's gone. Okay? So Stephen Street wants to create the illusion that he has job protection. He has none. He gets in the crosshairs of the governor and he is gone. Okay? That brings us to our most recent case, and that being Murphy Painter. Murphy Painter, as I have told you in previous videos, was not going to break the law and grant a $300,000 exclusivity payment to Budweiser for the sale of alcohol at Saints games. And the governor's office, specifically Governor Jindal, was saying, oh, yes, you are. And he said, oh, no, I'm not. And he said, look, I'll do it if you give me a letter saying that it's your office, Governor Jindal. Specifically, he was making this request of Stephen Waguespack, Governor's chief legal counsel. And Waguespack said that would not be an efficient use of my time. Mr. Waguespack was smart enough that he's a lawyer. He was no way in the world was he going to be stupid enough to put something like that in writing, basically saying we're advocating you break the law here. So as a result of Mr. Painter not playing ball, if you will, he was summoned in to Governor Jindal's office and he was fired that day. And then, of course, they had to try to manufacture a reason to justify that firing. And they went to work and went that very evening and started trumping up what is basically one of the most disastrous federal cases I can imagine. You know, I mean, it was just an utter embarrassment. Well, needless to say, Mr. Painter sued the Inspector General's office on a number of fronts, and that lawsuit is now dragged on for 6 years. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, but 6. So many court hearings, I've lost track of them, even though I believe I've attended, I think, every single one. There were 4, not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 amendments to his original pleading based on exceptions being filed by the various defendants, because there are quite a few in this particular litigation. And it reached the point that Judge Clark said, look, this thing has become so convoluted that you're going to need to redraft the entire petition, which is exactly what Al Robert Jr. did, and I would say he did a commendable job on that, and I would also agree with Ms. Clark, or Judge Clark, that it had become rather convoluted. Well, of course, once he redrafted the petition, of course, then the peremptory exceptions all flare up again, and I want to emphasize, we are talking about an ungodly amount of money, both for Delahousse and for Murphy Painter. And I mean, we are paying through the nose for this type of litigation, okay? And it was all because Stephen Street didn't have the backbone to buck the governor, and the reason he didn't have the backbone to buck the governor, especially one like Bobby Jindal, is he would have been gone like that, okay? And I will just let you know that on Thursday of last week, the day I'm filming this, let's see, I believe today is, it's only Tuesday, it's not going by all that fast. So in other words, 5 days ago, Judge Janice Clark issued her ruling on those peremptory exceptions. It took quite a while to get all the attorneys to, you know, agree upon a date at which all this could be argued. There was one false alarm back on December 8th, but they finally got argued, I believe it was February the 19th, and Judge Clark issued her ruling. And I'm going to give you a direct link for that ruling. As you can tell from our headline, it's yet another body slam for Inspector General Street's office. You may recall the Corey Delahousse matter. Those exceptions were overruled, so that's now being appealed to the First Circuit Court of Appeals. That's why I'm telling you we're talking about an ungodly amount of legal fees, all right? I'm going to go ahead and read, I'm going to read it verbatim, the ruling that Judge Clark made, and we give you a direct link to her ruling. The court is of the opinion that the exception of no cause of action filed on behalf of Shane Evans, that was one of the Inspector General investigators. He's the one, well, let me just break away for a second. He's the one who went out on that day that they had fired Murphy Painter. They interviewed Brant Thompson, who was going to basically be interim ATC chief once Painter was canned. Shane Evans being an investigator from the Inspector General's office, and he interviewed Brant Thompson. He is also the son of State Senator Francis Thompson. And Brant Thompson said that Murphy Painter was, and I quote, out of control, manic depressive, and selectively enforcing alcohol statutes. And I won't go through the whole deal, but basically Mike Fowler said, well, what, Mike Fowler being Painter's criminal defense attorney, he said, what investigatory techniques did you use to substantiate this? And Shane Evans readily said, I didn't do anything. I just wrote down what he said. And Fowler made it a point that, and it was based on your mere notation of this man's characterization that my client was out of a job that evening, to which Shane Evans didn't readily dispute. Now, that'll just tell you who Shane Evans is. Let me reread it over again now that you will know who Shane Evans is. And I want to emphasize that when Inspector General Street, the head of this agency, was put up on the stand and asked questions about this case, he said, and I quote, I don't have any knowledge of this case. You're going to have to speak with my investigator, who was Shane Evans. Shane Evans was brought in, and he gave testimony like I just told you. He wasn't even with the Inspector General's office at the point he was brought into federal court for testimony. He's gone to, and as far as I know, still is, works for the East Baton Rouge Parish Coroner's Office. Now, let me go back and reread this ruling. The court is of the opinion the exception of no cause of action filed on behalf of Shane Evans is not well-founded and hereby is overruled. Judgment to be signed accordingly. Notify counsel thereafter 5 days to take writs. One thing I know about Janice Clark, she is very famous for that, for saying 5 days to take writ. With respect to the exceptions based on malicious prosecution filed on behalf of Brant Thompson, he's the son of State Senator Francis Thompson, and he's the one that I told you made those comments to Shane Evans. The court has reviewed this matter and is of the opinion that the cause of action did not come until the criminal matters will resolve in petitioner's favor. And I just read it verbatim. All I'm doing is reading verbatim. Therefore, the court overrules the exception. Last paragraph. With respect to the motion to compel filed on behalf of petitioner, the court hereby grants the motion to compel, orders counsel to confer, and confect a discovery order in conformity with the court's ruling. Thereafter, the court will schedule a telephone conference upon receipt of the order. And it's authored by Lori Ashe, Thursday, March the 9th, 2017. I have no doubt the Inspector General's office will appeal this to the First Circuit, and we're going to rack up even more legal fees. All right? So the point I want to make in all of this is that due to a governor who was so hell-bent on cramming corruption in both situations, we've been stuck with paying this kind, and an Inspector General who was willing to go along and be his patsy in it instead of standing up and having some backbone. Of course, standing up and having some backbone would have meant he would have been fired like that. Everybody ought to know that. That's the type Governor Bobby Jindal was. That's exactly why I would submit to you why Bobby Jindal finds himself where he is right now, which is in a political wasteland. You will never see that man rise again. Take it to the bank. It'll never happen, okay? Now, I'd like to just bring up one thing. Stephen, there is an association out there. It's called the Association of Inspectors General. We're going to give you the website link for that particular organization. Stephen Street from Louisiana has headed that organization. Give you a little up-close view here. Like I said, we're going to give you the link. You can see his picture there. This is their website, all right? And let me just say this. Every year there's talk about, in the budget, we may abolish the Inspector General's office. And just like you have various telethons that go on every year, the Baton Rouge Press Club has been very accommodative in bringing Stephen Street in to basically conduct a begathon during this press club meeting to plead for funds. And trust me, that's all he's worried about, okay? And I would submit to you that for a gentleman who would stand up on sit on the stand in federal court and say, I don't have any knowledge of this case, it seems he has plenty of time to go around hobnobbing. This is in reference to the Boston convention last year. I believe if we scroll down a little more, you'll see where there's another upcoming one, winter convention in Jacksonville, Florida. Tom Aswell did a little piece about some of this extravagant travel on the part of Mr. Street's part, as well as some of the employees of his office. And I would submit to you that he ought to have his priorities straight. He ought not be getting up on a witness stand and saying, I don't have any knowledge of that case, then cut down on some of this. Focus on what your office ought to be doing. Perhaps if you did that, maybe you wouldn't have the kind of debacles that you are having. Not having search warrant authority, apparently going in and raiding Corey De La Houssaye's house when you didn't even have any jurisdiction. Okay? These are little things you might could clean up if you weren't out there having everybody tout you as, and that's something I want to get to as well. This particular organization has written a letter strongly defending Stephen Street and how his services are invaluable to the state of Louisiana. Well, talk is cheap. So from my vantage point, if they feel that strongly, put some money behind it. Write us a check. I think if you wrote us a check for about $2 or $3 million, we might be able to cover the litigation expense of the attorneys alone. And that's just to this point. Talk is cheap. Write us a check. Put your money where your mouth is. All right? They're not going to do that. When it comes to money, no, we got our own budget problems back in our own state. We sure don't have money to help Louisiana, but we'll sure write a letter. This man is not only costing us the direct expenditures of his office, he is costing us through the nose through sheer incompetence, okay? I don't know any other way to describe it. You look at the salaries of his investigators, 32, 34,000. What kind of credentials do you think you're going to get at those kind of salary levels? It's going to be damn little, okay? And that's why you're seeing some of the things you're seeing. In fact, I think Al Robert Jr. summed it up best when he said, outside of the presence of the jury in the Murphy Painter trial, and I'm quoting him, forgive my voice, I'm quoting him, "Your Honor, this is not the FBI. This is the OIG. These people do not know what they're doing." I don't think you can say it any better than that. And I think the proof's in the pudding. All of these repetitive outlays that we keep getting, and they're nowhere near being done. All because this man has no backbone, and he is not independent. I don't care how many times he slivers around and says, "My office is independent, Mr. Burns." He is not, and he knows it. And he doesn't like me confronting him with that fact. All right? Now, I realize that my commentary, look, here's the bottom line. I'm not a sugarcoater. When I open up a package and it is comprised of a combination of vomit and raw sewage, I'm going to call it vomit and raw sewage, okay? I don't fit in well with so-called good government groups who want to put together a fancy package and, when a doctor has a cancer diagnosis, when he's gone in and done exploratory surgery and has uncovered that there's cancer, he has an obligation to come out there and tell you that. It would be irresponsible to come out and say, "Well, we detected a little something, but we're gonna suggest you do this or change it." No, you're dying. Okay, that's what you need to hear from that doctor. You need the truth, and I'm going to give you the truth. When I open up a package and it's comprised of raw sewage and vomit, I'm going to tell you that's what it's comprised of, okay? I say that because the former head of one of these so-called good government groups last week respectfully told me he wanted off my email distribution list. And I can tell you it's these type messages that don't jive with the propaganda that they want to put out is why he's making that request. And I took him off with pleasure. Because I ain't changing my message. I'm going to call it what it is, all right? Now, I'm going to wrap this up by saying that you have never heard me say a word about our current Governor Edwards with regard to the Corey De La Houssaye and Murphy Painter situations, and there's a reason for that. It's a mess he inherited from his predecessor, and he doesn't have any control over it. I mean, these were not people that he had anything to do with that caused these problems, and yet the budget constraints, the cost of all these legal expenses is falling under his watch, draining the budget further. It's having to pay all these legal expenses, all right? So it would not be fair of me to stand up and slam John Bell Edwards for the Corey Delahousse mess or the Murphy Painter mess that we as taxpayers find ourselves in. That would not be fair of me, and that's why you've never heard me do it. And I will not do it. But I'm going to tell you something right now, and I said it at the last State Police Commission meeting. We'll give you a link. You can go back and see my comments. All right? You can take it to the bank. There's no way the State Police Commission is not going to be sued over the way they handled the Kathy Derbonne situation. And it was laid out there naked for everybody to see, okay? They put it on an agenda that this is what they were going to do. I was able, thank God we have this right, I was able to show up and film the whole thing. Every single appointee on that board who pulled that maneuver off is a John Bell Edwards appointee. All right? So while I never touched John Bell Edwards on Corey Delahousse or Murphy Painter because that would not be fair, it's on him what happens with this whole State Police Commission mess. And it's on him anything that Mike Edmondson turns out to be responsible for, up to and including the termination of that woman, if it is determined he is behind it, and you can pretty well rest assured, allegedly, the current chairman's told the Troopers Association, we're going to get this mess fixed, we're going to get her fired once I become chairman. He's now chairman and she's fired, imagine that. That's all on your back, John Bell Edwards. And you better believe I'm going to throw it in your face over and over again. And if the litigation is ongoing pertaining to Kathy Derbonne, by the time the next governor comes in, I'll offer him the same, him or her, the same courtesy I've offered you in not blaming you in one iota for Murphy Painter or Corey Delahousse. But you damn well are going to be held responsible for any litigation that ensues with regard to Kathy Derbonne. I want to thank everyone for joining in for this most recent Sound Off feature. My voice has occasionally given out on me, but not nearly as bad as it would have been if I would have tried to deliver this video on the very day that Judge Clark made her ruling. I hope you were able to bear with me for the times my voice did get a little strained. And once again, I hope you'll stay tuned for episode 3 with regard to the Billy Broussard and Gravity Drainage District 8 of Ward 1 of Calcasieu Parish. That thing's getting more and more interesting, and I think you would agree with me just for episodes 1 and 2. You're going to love episode 3. Thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you again real soon. Bye-bye.